Hello, and welcome to our unique website for learning about music in Northern Europe. Here we will have videos and free online courses that will serve as a rich resource for understanding the music traditions and musical practices of Scandinavia, the Nordic countries, and the Baltic countries. Some of what we present here is designed to complement this book, Advancing Music Education in Northern Europe. But you can enjoy the website either with or without the book, and the book simply gives you the option to learn more deeply. We envision our website as a platform where anybody curious about music or about the countries of Northern Europe can enjoy learning for free. But the material here can also become learning units to support higher education, which teachers can assign to students along with readings and assessments to confirm what they learn. We plan to have courses here that offer overviews of musical life in each of the 8 Nordic and Baltic countries: Iceland, Norway, Sweden, Denmark, and Finland, with Estonia, Latvia, and Lithuania. We will also have courses that focus on specific musical genres and practices, as well as issues in the music industry and music professions today. But first, a brief introduction. What is special about Northern Europe, and what makes this such an interesting place for music? Northern Europe is a distinctive region for music. First of all, it's useful to know that some of the most famous composers of all time are from countries in Northern Europe, including Edvard Grieg from Norway and Jean Sibelius from Finland. Their works are performed all around the world. Also, the most widely performed living composer, Arvo Pärt, is from Estonia. The second oldest symphony orchestra in the world is the Bergen Philharmonic, here in Western Norway. There's so many bands from all across Northern Europe that have become quite well known around the world. For instance, the band ABBA from Sweden is popular worldwide. There's the very creative Icelandic musician Björk, who's been quite influential. There's also even styles, genres like black metal, which is specially developed in Norway. And there's bands like Ylvis, which have this unique humorous style that's especially promoted through videos. There's also leading professional jazz ensembles, which is quite interesting considering that jazz is a style of music from the United States. But here in Europe, there's been ensembles like the Real Group, which is one of the most well-known a cappella jazz singing groups. Also the Umo Jazz Orchestra from Finland, which has brilliant arrangements and quite skilled improvisers in the band. In the field of opera and symphonic music, there's been many leading conductors and opera singers from various countries in Northern Europe. There's also quite a strong choral tradition from all across the Nordic and Baltic countries. There are famous choirs from Estonia and Latvia, but also from Norway and Iceland and everywhere in between. Very famous choir composers and conductors. Also, there's very strong folk music traditions from Scandinavia and the Baltic countries. These include, for instance, the Hardanger fiddle tradition from Norway and the accordion heritage from especially northern Finland. Let's consider a few distinctive features of social life and governance in Northern Europe. Specifically, it is important to note that for decades, the Nordic countries have been consistently rated highest in the world for gender equity in international surveys. They were among the first nations in the world to grant women the right to vote, and women presently hold many powerful jobs as CEOs and government officials. This may help to explain why in the Nordic states, such essential services as education, including university, healthcare, and childcare are mostly free of charge at enormous government expense. Moreover, generous family leave policies for both mothers and fathers require that employers support parenthood, keeping jobs available until parents are ready to return to work. The Baltic countries, since independence from Russia, have tended to look toward the Nordic countries as their main models for development of social institutions, at the same time that Baltic societies remain committed to sustaining their rich and distinctive cultural heritage. In Northern Europe, both Finland and Estonia have especially been getting attention recently for the quality of their schools. Both countries have done particularly well in the PISA test for international student achievement, performing nearly as highly as the top countries in the world, which are mostly situated in East Asia. How can we make sense of Northern Europe as a whole? Essentially, there are three regions that overlap to some extent. First of all, there's Scandinavia, which includes the three countries of Sweden, Denmark, and Norway, which have a shared history to some extent and very similar languages. Then there is the Nordic region. The Nordic countries include Scandinavia, but also the independent island nation of Iceland, far across the water to the west, as well as countries and territories like Greenland and the Faroe Islands, which are strongly connected to Denmark. And then to the east is Finland, a country that even today is 5% Swedish. And Finland has had a slightly different history than Scandinavia, because around 100 years ago it was very strongly connected to Russia. And culturally, it's very close to the Baltic countries, particularly Estonia. So there are three Baltic countries, which were part of the Soviet Union until the early 1990s. These are Estonia, Latvia, and Lithuania, each of which has a distinctive history. Lithuania was strongly connected to Poland, for instance, and Estonia and Finland have a very similar language. The Nordic countries have a combined population of around 27 million and an estimated total GDP of nearly $1.5 trillion. The Baltic countries, on the other hand, have a combined population of slightly more than 6 million and an estimated total GDP of $100 billion. Nordic and Baltic state policies that support free or heavily subsidized extracurricular music training in culture schools play an essential role towards strengthening music education, especially in childhood and adolescence. Popular music education is embraced in Nordic music education more than in many other parts of the world, playing a prominent role in schools. Upon visiting a school music program in Scandinavia, one is even more likely to see students playing in a rock band with electric instruments than in an orchestra with traditional acoustic instruments, and this has been the situation for a few decades. Choirs are also very widespread in schools and communities across all of Northern Europe, and along with popular music and folk music, there is a permissive attitude towards singing of sacred music in the public sphere, partly due to the legacy of state churches in the Nordic countries and Orthodox and Catholic traditions in Baltic states. In Norway, the enormous Cultural Rucksack program employs hundreds of professional artists and exposes thousands of school children to professional arts performances each year. Professional music ensembles in the other Nordic and Baltic states also have many outreach projects in schools and communities. Migration, refugees, and students from non-European backgrounds are widely regarded as entailing an especially important recent challenge for the field of music education in Northern Europe. Those from outside Northern Europe may recall stories of our ancient ancestors, the Vikings, who played on trumpets called lures as they departed on magnificent ships to distant lands, down the Volga River as far as Baku, or across the Arctic to North America, centuries before Columbus. In some ways, we may still, to some extent, be under-recognized pioneers, perhaps even in the field of music education. Certainly much has changed across centuries. But songs are still equally important, and other things have also remained the same. In the winter, Northern Europeans still ski through snowy meadows nestled in quiet forests. And in summer, we euphorically splash in isolated mountain lakes under the midnight sun, often with a joyful song on our lips. This video project is connected to an organization called the Nordic Network for Music Education. The NNME has been around for more than 20 years, and it is supported by Nordplus. And through this network, the Nordic Network for Music Education, there are two main activities. One is these annual intensive courses for master students, which happen in a different country each year. And the other is what's called mobility, which are these grants to support exchange of teachers and students. So they have the opportunity to travel and learn from teachers in each of the other countries. Will you join us through our survey of music across these clean, cool northern lands where equality, transparency, and innovation are sacred ideals?